Good afternoon, everyone. This is a meeting of the Devens Jurisdiction Framework Committee. Today is June 12th, 2024. My name is Victor Normand. I will be chairing this meeting. I'll now call the roll. Alan Minoyan?
Here.
Janice Livingston?
Here.
Robert Pontbriand?
Here.
Rich Maori, Tim Bragan, Brian Sawyer, Logan Breeze, Mike McGovern, Bill Marshall?
Here.
Neil Angus?
Here.
John Cater?
Here.
Odile Smith? Kristen Cullen?
Here.
We have a quorum. We are in order. First order of business, minutes from our meeting of May 8th. Any comments, questions, edits?
I had none.
Is there a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
By
Seconded.
John, second by Robert. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Without objection, the minutes are approved unanimously. I'd like to move further down on our agenda to the Mass Development section and welcome our guest here. I see two.
Yes.
Or are there three of you? Two. Okay. All right, I hope I get this right. Introduce, first of all, the interim Executive Director, President and CEO of Mass Development, Dan O'Connell.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the interim Executive Vice President of Devens Operations, Meg DeLaurier.
Yeah.
Welcome. Would you like to move up to our table?
Frank.
Sure.
No, we.
Do it on both sides, maybe?
Yeah. Yes.
Who is that?
Okay, we're gonna move you over here, because we're gonna make room for them, okay?
Hi.
Because they need the table. Okay, are you good? Okay.
Okay. Welcome to our meeting. It's good to have Mass Development at the table. It's been a while. Before, I'd like to just open it up to a free discussion, but just to kind of set the stage for the invitation that was extended to the former president and CEO of Mass Development. It concerned the draft of a warrant article that would change the zoning and raise the housing cap at Vicksburg Square. This committee adopted a draft of that and sent it off to Mass Development for their review. The former CEO got back to us with some concerns, and this board decided the best course of action would be to invite him to our next meeting. In the interim, two things happened. Dan Rivera left Mass Development, and also the governor introduced legislation as part of her economic development bill that potentially has an effect on Vicksburg Square as well. So Dan and Meg, I don't know if you really want to address yourself to Vicksburg Square initially. We're anxious to know what Mass Development's position is going forward. If you're prepared to do that, that'd be great. Meg?
So I have seen the correspondence from the group and Dan's response back. We did have, first of all, some concerns about the prescribed redevelopment and the numbers that were in that. But we're also very excited about the governor's economic development bill. And I think what we would like to do is see what that bill looks like and what actually comes out of the legislature. We are not inclined to go up against something that the governor is proposing at this point. We're actually very supportive of the economic development bill. Hopefully by the end of July, we see what's in it. The working group will hopefully survive the bill, and we would look forward to going from there and joining the working group.
Yeah, I would add just a little bit about my role and how long I'm going to be in this role, and I think it's relevant to you. I was serving on the board of Mass Development. I was appointed by Governor Healy to the board. When Dan resigned, Dan Rivera, I was asked by the governor and my fellow board members, Chair, Secretary Howe, to serve while a search was undertaken for a new president and CEO. A search firm has been hired, Isaacson Miller. You probably have worked with them or know them. They've done a lot of work in government and education. I'm meeting with them for the first time on Monday to talk about the scope of the search. And I'm going to be serving. Initially, the discussion was for 5 months. Now it's up to 6 months through the search until we find the new president and CEO, at which point I'll go back on the board. So there'll be some continuity. I've had a good transition with Dan Rivera. We've been meeting weekly, and he's been very helpful in bringing me up to speed on issues. And just to reinforce what Meg just said, we are fully supportive of the governor's bill and the lifting of the housing cap at Devens. We think it's going to be relevant to what happens or doesn't happen at Vicksburg Square. We have 80 to 90 acres of land that is available for housing development if the cap is lifted. And we would immediately engage with the committee that's called for in the legislation and trying to come up with a plan that worked for everyone to help solve the state's housing crisis, the workforce housing crisis. Tremendous success at Devens. It took a long time, and I know a lot of you were helpful in making it happen, but 10,000 people working there every day now, and a lot of demand for housing in the region. More amenities at Devens. The canteen opened up a couple of weeks ago, and it seems to be
Exciting news in Devens.
well. So that's where we are in the situation. Thank you for the invitation to come today, and I'd like to listen to anything you think I should hear. We have an active real estate committee on our board, and I'll be taking Devens issues back to that real estate committee. Brian Kavugian and Gary Campbell are the current members. We're adding a third member who's our designee from the Secretary of Administration and Finance. So we'll have DCAM, A&F, the part of the government that does the budgeting and the management of properties, state properties, involved in our real estate committee as well. So anything that, any suggestions or anything that you want to put before the group, I would take through the real estate committee of the board, and they would take it to the board. So thank you again for inviting me today.
Okay.
Just to clarify, DCAM will not become involved in Devens redevelopment.
No,
We're working with them on some military installation potential projects.
Which is also another hat that you wear, Meg.
Yes.
Not
very small-
interim, but actually vice
A
president.
very small portion of my time is still spent on military initiatives, and of course we have the Devens Reserve Forces training area in Devens, so.
Okay. So based on your comments, the aspiration of this committee was that we would move towards a super town meeting in the fall. But is it your position that you like that held in abeyance until the economic development bill passes and we know whether or not there will be a working group? And
Yes, I think as the answer.
Okay.
And the legislative session ends on July 31st. The bill will either prevail or die on that date. I think it will be that date. You know, the legislature works right up to the last minute.
11:59.
11:59 on July 31. They may get, this is an important bill, and the governor's been pushing it along with her housing bill, but I think it'll be the end of the month of July before we know what's happening.
So if the bill does not pass, unlikely as that may seem, then would you be willing to re-engage with us on a super town meeting for Vicksburg Square?
I think I would, at that point, take it to our board and get direction from them as to how they want to proceed. We're hoping and fairly optimistic that the bill will pass.
Yeah, sure. So if it does pass, within 30 days, as I understand, the working group needs to be established, and they have 6 months to produce, so that clearly takes us beyond the fall.
The fall, yeah.
Okay, and that will, depending upon the work of the working group, that will inform us as to what might happen at Vicksburg Square, hopefully. Okay.
I think that's right.
Right. Okay, with respect to housing in general, is there any other comments from the board? Alan, I think it looks like you have something you'd like to say.
I always look that way.
You always look like that.
80% of the time, there's nothing.
That's still gonna come back and haunt you, that comment.
Okay, so there's one other burning question, and I'll ask it if no one else will, and that is Mass Development willing to rejoin this board?
I think we are going to wait to see what happens with the legislation.
Okay.
And we will then be mandated to deal with that committee as described in the board. We think that for the 6-month period is the entity that we'll be working with most closely as required by the legislation.
Okay, but that entity is charged with dealing with housing at Devens, whereas this committee deals with all aspects of future government at Devens.
Housing is the priority of the governor, and I think we're going to move forward on that first,
Okay,
if the legislation passes.
okay. If the legislation does not pass.
So I think from Shirley's standpoint, and my standpoint, I mean, I think getting the meeting with the secretary was a huge step forward. Obviously, our delegation members were very instrumental in that, and I think that was a very big step forward, and I think let's probably just see how the 31st plays out and kind of go from there. I think having the two of you back at the table here today, I think is also a big step forward as well. And, and I would just say, you have your priority in terms of the legislation right now. For us, we've been at this for however long. To take another month and a half or whatever probably isn't going to do a ton. So I would say let's just hold off and see where we go.
Okay. Mike, why don't we, I think it relates to this, why don't we ask you to report on your meeting with Secretary Howe?
Sure, and if Robert wants to jump in a little bit as well. I don't know if Don Ludwig is up there. I can't see too well, but I thought it was a great meeting. We were in there for probably about a half an hour or so. The secretary, I think, is definitely committed to working with the group and wanting to extend that olive branch and making sure that we're all on the same page and having that discussion, if that's where the state is going, if it is, housing, and at the end of the day, as I mentioned in the meeting, that it's the state's jurisdiction, that we want to be at the table, and she understands that as well, that while it's their jurisdiction, it benefits everybody from having us all at the table, so.
Mike, who was at that meeting?
Who was what?
Who
who
attended
was at
that
the meeting? Oh, geez. There was obviously Robin and I. The
Was there?
chair, or is it executive vice president right now? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And Secretary Howe is the chair of our board as well. Senator Cronin was there by Zoom, so he wasn't physically present, but he was able to monitor the meeting and speak. Senator Eldridge was there as well.
Don Ludwig joined remotely.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the two town administrators.
And staffers from Senator Eldridge and
Legal counsel for
Sena's office were there.
And Sina there?
Yeah,
No.
Sina was not there, but a staffer from his office was there. And then Undersecretary Stolba was also there. And
legal counsel.
John
John
Costa.
Costco and their legislative person, whose name is escaping me. Their leg person was there.
Yeah.
So it was good. Like I said, I mean, we didn't say, well, we came to an agreement on A, B, C, or D or anything like that. No, that wasn't it. But there was a lot of very, very positive intro discussion.
Okay.
And that's the way I felt. I could be wrong. Everybody else may disagree,
Robert?
but I think it was very positive.
Yeah, just to add in first, Dan and Meg, welcome to Air on behalf of the town of Air and the select
Thank you.
board. Good to see you again. Just to add what Michael said, I thought it was a very positive meeting. One of the key points we really stressed is that the future can only be successful with a collaborative approach of the three towns, the DEC, Mass Development, the state, and the residents and businesses on Devens. And I would just add, one of the takeaways is when the secretary is giving you the thumbs up and the state senator in pushing to apply for the one-stop grant for the study money, Mr. Chair, we had to sort of make an executive decision on the spot as the deadline was 48 hours later. I just want to add, I'm pleased to report, and a special thanks to Alan for all of his work and expertise on a 36-hour deadline. The secretary was really stressing,
Yep.
as was the state senator, to apply for that 300,000. So it would be for planning purposes for this effort. So the application was submitted, and I did send an email to the whole framework. Again, it's sort of decision when you're in the secretary's office, and they really push that. And Alan, thank you for making that happen. So it
Well,
was
we
a
have a
positive
good
meeting.
captain, the captain says, you can take that hill. You say, no, I can't see. Yes, you can. So I had a good captain. We did it.
Is there any timeline on when a decision might be made on grants?
Not that I'm aware of.
No, I'm not, I don't know if there's anything in the.
It's
is there
the
anything in
first round of the one-stop program, which
Yes.
is a innovation of this administration. And we've been actively involved in it. I think it's going to simplify things for entities, individuals, cities and towns dealing with the state. But I don't think that they
I don't know if there was a
timeline in the
timeline.
review
There was
process.
nothing on the,
Well, I'll check on that and
Yeah.
get back to you.
They usually, we'll hear by September or so. is
That's
usually-
what I think,
Oh,
yeah.
after the
yeah.
review.
Neil, before you speak, if anyone observes someone with a hand up on Zoom, please bring it to my attention. I'm squinting to see that. Neil, you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just curious if, the grant was awarded, is that an indication that Mass Development would come back to the table as part of the jurisdictional discussions?
We would look for direction from our board, the secretary and the real estate committee at that point. It's not an understatement that the secretary urged the filing of the application, and it was great that you're able to put it together in 48
Congratulations on
hours. That
getting
must
that
have been
done.
quite a challenge, but
It was thrilling.
I bet.
It's a little guy, though, so it's
politely,
okay.
right?
Janice, you have a comment?
I'm just curious, you keep saying that, if the board tells us to come back to the table, so are you saying that the board told Dan to not come back to the table? Just the way you keep saying that, that's why I want to clarify that, so.
I was serving on the board, and I don't think it rose to the board level.
Okay, so that was
At that
just
point.
his decision. Okay. No, I just wanted clarification, so, thank you.
Okay, I have the genesis of that meeting was from this committee right after the governor introduced the legislation, the Economic Development Bill, that referenced a legislative change to the reuse plan, which is not the way changes have been ever made in the past. And so the question was asked, and hopefully it was brought up at this meeting, does that signal a change going forward in how things will happen at Devens? Legislatively rather than super town meeting? That was the question, and I don't know if it was asked, but
I don't believe that it was asked in the meeting, but I would say that question is better posed to the legislators. Mass Development did not request the legislation.
Well, no, it was
It came out of the governor's
governor's
Right.
office.
That's correct.
Right.
So the governor made that decision. I do not know
Okay.
what her thinking was behind it, but we were not advocates at Mass Development for that decision. That came out of her,
Sure.
her office.
The select board in Harvard did send a letter to the governor asking that question, and has, as far as I know, as of a week ago, has not gotten any kind of an answer from the governor. And I think it's critical, and I think, Mike, you were outspoken when it first came up, that if the governor and the legislature are just going to take over what happens at Devens, then what are we doing here? So it's just so I know that it's, you know, beyond the scope of what Mass Development. I think Mass Development would be concerned about that as well, because the super town meeting doesn't happen without Mass Development's input.
Well, that was, yeah, I mean, that was my statement a number of times, right? Because I felt that we were sitting here, if, you know, those couple things happened, and we kept sitting here and having all these discussions, breathing our own exhaust, and that's when I brought up the point of trying to get in to see the secretary and, you know, and have that discussion. Okay, you know, what is the thought process? Where are you going? We'd like to be part of that. And that happened. And I think me asking that question, I think actually got us to this point where we're at right now.
But no one from the governor's office was at that meeting.
Well, the way I look at it is that you have the secretary there, and that's a representative of the governor. I think it's just as good. Yeah, I mean, that's typically how it works. I mean, you've been involved with government, you know, Victor.
Was anyone there from the Secretary of Housing and Livable Communities?
No, no.
I asked that question because it seems like the working group will report to that secretary.
To both. To both.
Both. Okay.
The legislation says both economic development and housing and livable communities.
So just so the two of you know, that is a concern on the part of this committee and by extension the towns. Are we being sidelined with respect to the future of Devens? So, and we do want you back at the table. That's okay.
I think,
Neil?
Mr. Chair, it's important to point out the process in 498 as well, too, that establishes all three towns participating in a study similar to the working group that's being created, or that may be created as part of the housing discussion, but for the final disposition of Devens, which we are charged with. You know, that still exists, the mechanism in 498 to involve all of us. I understand the legislature could do
Well,
whatever
then,
they want at
yes.
full rank, but that process as it stands is still.
I think one thing that needs to be pointed out in terms of the magnitude of the decision is that, to my knowledge, the legislature and the governor have never changed zoning in any city or town in the Commonwealth. I'm not aware of that. I know it's an issue, and I know the legislature would like to be able to do that, but they've never done it. But that could, as a result of a recommendation from the working group, that's exactly what could happen. So, am I wrong, Janice?
Okay, just to clarify what you just said, so your concern is that because the state has moved in to change Devens as it exists right now, that this working group will now decide that it'll see potential of the state being able to do that in other towns?
Well,
I know, I'm trying to clarify what you said. So is that?
Yeah. Right now, if an individual state senator introduced a bill that would change zoning in the city of Worcester, I can't imagine that happening, and I don't think it's ever happened.
Devens is not a municipality.
Right.
Devens
It's
is not
state-owned
a
land.
municipality.
Right.
That's correct. Now,
And it's not changing zoning, that housing would happen in the designated area for
yes,
housing.
yes.
So I think your premise is incorrect.
Well, no, except that it's unclear how a recommendation from the working group would be implemented. Would that go back to a super town meeting, or would that be additional legislation?
I think that's part of what the working group will have to work out,
Okay.
because 498 will still be right alongside it. So everything that the working group is doing based on what the state says still has to double check 498. So everything kind of has to still work together.
So if the working group recommendation, which involves zone changes, what, and I don't expect you to have an answer today, but what would Mass Development's position be? Would it be, let's go to town meeting, or go the legislative route? Because Mass Development is a player, significant player when it comes to super town meeting. But when it goes to the legislature, then our role is diminished significantly.
Although I think Neil's point is a valid one, both 498 and the legislation pending has a significant role for the three towns. I don't see any drawing back from that policy. 498 has not been changed, and when they came up with this piece of legislation to lift the cap, all three towns are named as members of the committee to make the decisions.
Well, except, don't mean to be argumentative, but lifting the cap has only been done in the past by super town meeting. That was done for the town of Shirley. And the cap was lifted, and it was done in super town meeting, not by legislation.
Well, the commercial square footage cap was lifted by legislation.
They changed it after super town meeting, right?
There wasn't a super town meeting as part of that. It was was posed as a friendly amendment,
That's right, yes.
legislative amendment that all the towns agreed on. And so
And then when the state got it, they upped it, didn't they?
They
Then
upped it to
changed
20
it,
now.
yes.
state did what?
Yeah, okay, so but they changed it, yes, you're right, it wasn't friendly, so yeah, we didn't do a
There is
super town
precedent
meeting.
for that being our.
That's right, but Mass Development went around, and Meg, I think you were involved, it went around to each of the three towns looking for their endorsement of it, which they got.
The deck actually did that
Yeah, I was involved in it.
That's right.
in consultation with Mr. Rivera.
I remember Peter sitting at
But
the
it
table.
was Peter
Yep.
and myself
Yep.
went to each of the towns to explain the situation. It was an administrative change based on a bylaw that was in existence that was changed in 2008 by MIPA, but it was never officially changed. The language was never changed in the bylaw. So it was not as big as everybody, made it out to seem, that it was, oh my God, the whole housing, the commercial square footage development cap is completely lifted. There's still a number of metrics that were in place, so that was.
Yeah,
That
so
was
the
done
last
by the
time we actually had a
legislature.
super town meeting was, what, 2012?
Shirley, I believe it was Shirley.
Shirley or
Shirley.
I
Vicksburg
said what
Square?
year, I'm saying what year.
Yeah, it was probably the Shirley,
Shirley Housing, senior
Shirley
housing.
Village Growth District,
Yeah,
allowing 120 units of senior
Yeah.
residential housing.
yeah, so it was,
That doesn't count towards the cap.
True.
And that went to
Right.
3 towns.
yeah, but that was, what I'm saying is that was years ago, so we haven't had a super town meeting. For well, a decade. Yeah.
Have we talked this enough? Any other comments? Anyone? Anyone on Zoom? Okay,
Chairman, if I could,
yes, John?
just for point of clarification for the public, when we talk about the warrant article that was submitted by this committee, it was specifically talking about Vicksburg Square. However, the legislation does not talk about Vicksburg Square, it talks about the Innovation and Technology Center. So as we continue this conversation, let's keep in mind that other parcels on Devens more likely are more suitable and readily available to address the housing crisis versus Vicksburg Square. Not saying nothing should be done with Vicksburg Square, but if we're looking at expediency to alleviate some of this housing crisis, we have to think of the Innovation and Technology Center, which includes parcels outside of Vicksburg Square. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you. And thank you for taking us out of order. I think we'll stay and listen to the meeting if.
okay, sure.
Okay, yeah.
No, that's great, thank you.
Okay, stakeholder updates. Town of Air.
I think we've pretty much given you the update.
Writing
Right?
grant application.
Oh,
Well,
I'm sorry, Alan has
No,
some.
that's okay. No. No, I'll just say quickly, our committee's doing really well. We're meeting tonight, again, after we've had a great sessions with our fire chief, with our police chief. Tonight, we are meeting with our Department of Public Works director, and they're going through, scenarios of the municipal impact to our services and costs. So it's actually great that our departments are working great with our committee. And one step further, we're organizing now. We want to better understand the Nashua River and the Oxbow National Wildlife Refuge. And we have organized, our committee's going on a group canoe trip. We're getting our people right out on the river, which is important to just get our folks out on the land and the water bodies to really understand what we're making decisions about. So we're planning that. So we have a very engaged committee right now. I'm very pleased to report, Mr. Chairman.
Great.
Thank you.
I'm very pleased to hear that.
He's such enthusiasm.
That was intense, Alan. That was very intense.
I just felt like doing that to Victor right there. I don't know why.
On behalf of Air, apologies for the excess energy. That's the grant application, he's got some left over.
Still on the fumes,
But
that's
just,
right.
again, a special thanks to Alan, and we will keep everybody updated as the grant
Oh, yeah.
application
I know, I'm being a bit of what, but no, we feel very good about our committee, really. Very engaged in our process is going well.
And I'm sure this committee will find other uses for your energy.
Hey.
Yes.
Okay. Town of Harvard, the Harvard Devens Jurisdiction Framework Committee met. We discussed the economic development legislation. The things that I mentioned pretty much are what came up at the meeting. And also we just discussed our subsequent submissions to the framework matrix. That was it. Shirley, anything?
There's no update as right now.
Well, there is an update in Shirley. Do you want to?
Well,
It kind of relates to this.
yeah, I'm leaving, shortly, yes. My last day will be June 27th, so I'm leaving. There's not much else to say.
You're leaving voluntarily? You got another offer? I mean, we could,
It just makes me uncomfortable, that's all, yes. Yes, I'm leaving, I'm going to work for another town. It's a good opportunity, it's closer down to the South Shore where my wife and I have a house as well down there. We have the house in Chelmsford, and so she's retiring in February, and she said it was either you'd have to find an apartment for 3 years or, look for another job closer. So, yeah, I'll be starting in mid-July down in Holbrook, so.
congratulations.
It's been almost 6 years, which really, it blows me away. But yeah, it's been 6 years. It's been good. We've gone through a lot over there, but I think the town's actually in a good place right now, and they'll be fine. I've always said it won't be me, it'll be the next person that comes after me that just comes to work each day and, just goes home at 5 o'clock type thing. So there's a lot of good people over there. So.
Well, Mike, we're gonna miss you and your ties.
So Holbrook's gain is our loss.
Yes.
On behalf of the committee, just thank you for your efforts here.
Thank you.
Very much appreciated. And this will, if you stick to your schedule, this will be your last meeting here.
Yes.
It's been a pleasure working with you. Thank you.
John Catter, what's
Yes.
going on with Devens?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. We continue to see increases in resident participation in both the Devens Committee and Devens Connect meetings. Issues most often discussed include the progress of the Governor's Economic Development Bill, housing on Devens, as well as issues relating to jurisdiction. The most recent Devens Committee meeting was well attended. Committee members and residents spoke on the issues for nearly 2 hours. We were very pleased to see the committee engaging in critical discussions and voicing their opinions alongside the residents. The current committee continues the legacy of previous members as they strive to engage residents and represent them effectively. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Devens Enterprise Commission, Neil or Bill?
I'll start off. The commission has been meeting regularly, and we went through the social services, the matrix update during a public meeting. Other than that, I think I don't have anything else to add. Do you, Mr. Marshall?
No, that's, I agree. Moving along, going into the summer solstice.
I think there's been an agreement that this matrix process seems to be, very beneficial, bringing to the forefront all of the issues that both the towns will have to deal with, with all of the scenarios. So it's been a very valuable project, I think.
I agree, that's great. Any progress on your alternate member approval from the governor?
We are working on a number of appointments and reappointments to the deck, so no word as of yet, though.
Okay. All right, moving right along, old business RFEI posting. It's been posted. I received 2 inquiries, I believe from an individual consultant and one from a consulting firm, and they both asked for additional information, which leads me to believe they really didn't read the REFI thoroughly, because it's clear we don't have any additional information. And have you, Robert or Mike, have you gotten any?
Nothing.
I haven't
No
had
response.
anything now.
Okay.
Where's the best place to find that right now? If I wanted to go online and say,
It's on, what did I post it on? Combis? Yeah.
Combi is a very thick site. When you get
Yeah,
it,
but don't forget though, people that do this, whether it's a construction company or they're looking constantly.
Every day.
And as I mentioned at the last meeting, it gets sent out to companies. So it was sent out to, once you hit upload and send, it gets automatically sent to, I think it was 1,700 firms that have signed up to that bracket, if you will. So.
Cool.
And Mike, you submitted it?
Yeah, we submitted to there, and then to the Central Register, and was there one other one, Robert? Central Register, Combis. I have to go back and look, but those are the two biggies.
When does is it open-ended or does the deadline close?
Tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow.
Right.
5 p.m. tomorrow.
So no risk of responses after your
No,
departed.
and Logan, the assistant, he's looped in too. So.
Okay, great.
Okay, Janice?
Lost it. Sorry, Janice.
Oh, I know. When they asked for more information, did they like give you a hint as to like what information they were looking for, or no? Okay.
They did not.
Which that's weird in itself. Can I have additional information?
Yeah.
What
Regarding
information?
what?
Did anyone respond, or what's the
Not
status?
that I've seen.
No, I mean to the request for additional information. I mean, should we not look at following through or following up with that?
I did not. I forwarded it to
Yeah.
Mike.
There was no response. So.
Okay, next item on our agenda under new business is question 3 on the framework.
All right, I'm going to try to share the screen.
So the issue that we dealt with over the past month is the provision of social services at Devens, and how under each of the 5 permanent government scenarios, social services would be handled.
Can everybody see it?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay.
That is a response from the town of Air. Alan?
No, I'll just say Air has a great legacy of social service, professional staffing. I think it just has to do with the very deep economic, social, cultural diversity the town's had because of its history with Devens. So I think we would be quite capable, if that came back to us, to be able to really serve very well the social, service needs of an expanded population and more land. I think we may be best suited for it, and again, it just has to do with the nature of Air's history. Great diversity economically. And
All right, any questions for Air?
you know, we have a full-time social worker now in our town. I think we may be the only town that has a full-time social worker.
So just for clarification, what the assignment relates to the town of Air resuming jurisdiction over its portion of Devens.
Yes,
Okay.
the historical part, right.
Harvard pretty much went through the same exercise, and is that we have what's listed here are all of the activities of the town that would come under the heading of social services as a broad category. And in this report, it points out that two of those activities, the Council on Aging and the library, both have permanent staff. The other committees are dominated by volunteers, although they do have, in some instances, staff support to the various committees and commissions, but significantly staffed by volunteers within the town. Now, Shirley, you haven't submitted anything?
No, we don't have a committee, and
Okay.
I've said this to you before, for me to,
How are you handling social services at the new senior housing project? How's that?
this Shirley Meadows,
Yeah.
I mean, the only service is they have the ability to go up to the Council on Aging, but other than that, we don't do anything with it.
And they're in Devens.
Yeah. If there's a 911 call, Devens responds.
Right, yeah.
So they and we see a few up there, but not too much. So
Is that accurate? Does 911, does that, well, go said dispatch on Devens. but-
Dispatch, but Devens responds. It's
Yeah.
within the Devens Regional Enterprise Zone.
What about, but the Air Police Department doesn't respond?
nope.
Even though they're right next door?
That would be Shirley Police Department, and know that
Shirley, right.
once again, they still don't respond. It's Devens and the stateies, state police. If we have to, right? I mean, there's mutual aid, so you know the Shirley Fire Department and Shirley Police do, but no, the call is to. I keep pointing to you, Tech, but Devens.
Yes, it's a regional dispatch, so it goes to Devens Regional Dispatch, and then the call goes out to Devens Ambulance or Police Fire.
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't be so quick to say that. I don't know if it goes
believe
through the
it
state
is.
police 911 up there. It may go through their dispatch, right? Because there's a dispatch up there.
Shelby Valley Regional Dispatch.
Yeah.
Yeah, which
So it doesn't even go through ours.
Fire, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Council on Aging, you know, cooperation with the town of Shirley, but we're working with Shirley Meadows and the Montechusett Regional Transit Agency, providing shuttle service for them as well, too, so.
we don't really have much.
Why not?
Tried to get another one behind there, but
Health inspections
Might
all go
work out.
through us in association with Neshoba Associated Boards of Health, so it's
Building permits to the deck.
building permits, it's within our jurisdiction, so it's maybe called Shirley Meadows, but it's within Devens.
Shirley Meadows at Devens.
At Devens, yes.
Okay.
The Meadows at Devens.
All right, Neil, social services status quo, future governance.
So between the deck and, as I mentioned, our support services with Neshoba Associated Boards of Health, most of the social services are, we do a lot of social services through the Neshoba Associated Boards of Health. Mass Development does work with the town of Air, with the Veterans Associations as well, too. You know, senior center partnerships with the surrounding towns as well, too. Devens does have a number of special services, adult daycare services, transitions, homeless women's shelter, all these, and veterans housing. These are all run by separate organizations, but there is some involvement in terms of inspections and so forth. So, also, you know, First Nations support through UNAC, the United Native American Cultural Center, which Mass Development supports them with a space on Devens. So And the Devens Public Safety Fire Department does a lot with social services in terms of community gatherings and support. So lots of services going on. So it's good to have these. Again, this exercise is good to list all these things that are happening, so that whatever happens down the road, everyone is aware of what's happening right now at Devens.
It's a two-way communication here, that the Devens gets to see what people who live in the towns expect, and the reverse is true, is that the towns get, by virtue of the listings that you present, what is provided on Devens, and the expectation going forward is that they'll be continued, I would expect.
Right.
John?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. So we echo Neil's statements about the services available on Devens, and there's a lot of them, and the residents of Devens embrace them. Marissa Rivera, my alternate, spearheaded this, and I'll speak to it, but she couldn't be here today because of the time constraint. Devens will be compliant with all Massachusetts general laws related to social services. As the state notes, program services vary from town to town depending on the community needs and values. While we address the provisioning of the most significant social services, we intend to add additional programs or services via town boards, commissions, or committees as town residents determine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good. Are there any questions on any of this? Okay. All right, very good. So the next topic is education, public education. So again, if you could get your work done and responses to Janice and I by...
Always by the noontime of the Friday before the next meeting.
Noontime on Friday before the...
So, and a reminder will go out, just so I can have the packet ready and everything, so.
Okay.
And I'm not doing it late at night.
Okay, also under new business, summer meeting schedule.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yes, Janice.
it was previously brought up at our last meeting about meeting schedule. We have the RFEI closes out tomorrow, and it doesn't look like we have a response, really any responses yet. Legislation isn't going to make a decision until 11:59 p.m. on July 31st. So with the summer upon us, and many of our committees and everything go on kind of a summer hiatus, I'm making a recommendation that we at least take the month of July off and then meet again in August. At that point, we will know more of what the legislation will do, and everyone can have a nice summer.
Okay. Thoughts, anyone? John?
I would agree with that. The other topic I'd like to discuss, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, is it was stated previously that after the budget process is done, we can revisit the time of the DGFC, understanding that for town employees, it's a matter of business, but for those of us that are not employed by the town, it's quite difficult. As you can tell, Marissa Rivera is very rarely able to be here, and very rarely are Devens or other residents able to tune in because many people work. Would the committee consider an after-hours meeting in addition to an adjustment to when the meetings do occur?
Okay, you just happen to be looking at me, so I'm just gonna give my opinion. I'll give my opinion. I'm like, I'm open. As far as, people not being able to attend the meetings, we run into that problem with every committee that we have.
Yeah.
I always left work early to get to the meetings and everything like that, so that's kind of a problem that always exists. As far as the employees and everything, we do have to kind of look at their schedule, because otherwise, they're running the show. That being said, I don't have a problem with it being looked into, so.
John, what meeting time would you propose?
What if you look at some of the other meetings that are out there? I think the Devens committee meetings at 6:30, 6-ish.
We have a lot of evening meetings here,
Yeah.
so, yeah. So that might be tough.
So maybe we just bring it up, table it and bring it up at our next session, and we can think about it over the next month, rather than us pinning it down right now, but it's something I want to...
I think we can look at it and throw out some options. Yeah.
So it's either before, during, or after supper, basically, is
Yeah.
how it works out.
So,
Right,
yeah,
so
we'll
why don't-
look at,
we'll
we'll
put-
look at some options. And
Right,
then-
so we'll put it on the agenda, and everyone look at your schedules, look hard at your schedules, and see what
Yep.
what works, and John, we'll do our best to accommodate it.
Yeah. And Mr. Chair, yeah, and I'll take a look at the town hall schedule here, so we'll
Yes.
be prepared to consider that.
Thank you.
And I would echo what Janice brought up. I think taking July off would make sense.
Okay, so how does the rest of the committee feel about taking July off? Any objection?
I was gonna say, I suggested you meet once a week, go to once a week.
Technically, you get a vote, but you really don't.
So, well, I'll tell you what, Logan's not here, so do you think Logan would like to have July off for this committee?
I think he would.
All right, he's still in charge of the minutes.
Yes, he is, yeah, we confirmed
No,
that.
no. So our next scheduled meeting, regularly scheduled meeting would be August 14th. That's my birthday, so if I'm not here, that's why, so.
Okay, unless there's a serious objection, we will not meet in July. One element I'd like to add to that, since we won't be meeting in July, I would really like to keep our framework matrix moving. So I'd like to propose that we deal with education, which is the next item on the list, and then the item after that is police services. So deal with both of those, or be prepared to submit for our August meeting. Okay? Good. Public comment. Anyone? Anyone? Yes.
Phil Fama, Bradley Circle in Devens. I just want to voice my support of the governor's initiatives on housing. I do want to see more housing in Devens and soon, because it is a crisis. Having said that, I'm just wondering, and I brought this up before, why is Vicksburg Square still on the table? We know that it's not going to be an answer to the housing crisis. Why are we talking about it? And why can't we just postpone dealing with it until 2033?
I'll give you an answer. Why it came before this committee was that Senator Cronin introduced an amendment to the state budget changing zoning and increasing the cap for Vicksburg Square. That's what precipitated it, and that's why this committee dealt with it.
Is there any chance that we can table it?
It's been tabled, effectively.
But we keep talking about it, just forget about it until 2033. I don't see how it helps the residents of Devens to be talking about it.
That goes to the heart of some comments that were made earlier by me, and that is that despite the inclination of this committee, despite what mass development may or may not want to do, the governor and the legislature can do it. They can change zoning. Again, Senator Cronin specifically introduced an amendment to the state budget, changing the zoning and raising the cap for Vicksburg Square. So I think...
But it failed. It did fail. And it wasn't even his jurisdiction, which surprised Senator Eldridge.
And he's reintroduced the bill, just so you know.
Did Senator Eldridge know this time? Just saying. I mean, for my point of view, only talking about Vicksburg Square is, at this point, I just would like the buildings, cleaned up at this point, and fixed and renovated and stuff, which that could happen, it wouldn't do an immediate address, but it could happen and be, made to look nice and down the road, increase housing, because if that waits till 2033, the buildings just deteriorate every day. So as far as that goes, that's my personal opinion, but not necessarily anything to do with this committee.
If you remember, in January, I sat here and I mentioned I had the idea to fix the facade that faces Rogers Field, and to make it really nice so that we're proud of it. Put a new roof on it, and to shore it up so that nature doesn't take over and make it collapse. Just,
Well, actually, Mass Development has a plan.
Yeah.
Meg? Vicksburg Square, isn't there an artist competition to?
well, that's,
That's for the lower level windows that the plywood needed to be replaced, so we thought it would be fun to include the community in a art installation that's representative of Rogers Field that we just announced last week. So we're hoping people take us up on it. We're even providing the plywood.
Something.
that's not at all what I'm talking about.
I realize
I know
that.
you're not, but
Yes.
If I remember, I do remember you talking about it, and I think too, we said that because of the historical protections, that somebody else would have to get involved. And so, since you're here, we're letting you know, whoever needs to be made a phone call to fix the buildings, we'd all like it.
Are there any other comments? Anyone on Zoom with a comment?
it's a comment on your screen.
What is, I can't read that.
Senator Cronin said he withdrew it without prejudice, never came to a vote. So Paul Green says Senator Cronin's bill did not fail.
Never came to a vote. Technically,
It
okay.
wasn't a bill, it was a budget earmark. So that's
Amendment to
it's
budget bill.
an incorrect term to claim it was a bill.
But it didn't go to a vote, so.
No, it didn't. He
Right.
withdrew, correct. I was down there at that time.
Okay, so for our next meeting,
I have a question.
I'm sorry.
Is there still an issue trying to push jurisdiction more to the present or we stay with 2033? There was talk about changing the jurisdiction first and then building houses.
I think, didn't we close that conversation
I don't know,
a couple of
I was
months
wondering.
ago? I think we've closed that conversation. I think that, as we move forward, and I've said this before, if stars align, you might see the date maybe move back a year, but
Not drastically.
yeah. No, I don't think that there's anything anybody's pushing for at this particular moment. Yeah. That would have to be like a natural progression, you're going along and you're like, oh, look, we're all ready, maybe we can move that date back a year. But I don't think nobody was
This
driving
committee
for it.
has not taken a position on that.
I forgot to say, I'm Cindy Carter. I live on Committee Street in Devens. Excuse me.
Any other comments? Anyone on Zoom with a comment? Okay, items for our next agenda, time change, we'll put that on there. And then the usual, we'll talk about education and police protection. And hopefully
And
have
the legislation
have a
update.
report on the economic development legislation. And you're welcome back, Dan and Meg, if you are so inclined. We'll keep you in the loop. Sorry. There being no further business before this committee, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those in favor opposed say nay. Without objection, the motion passes unanimously. We are adjourned.